Good morning. Welcome back to my workbench. My name is Erica, and I am so happy that you're here today. Today on my bench, we have a Stihl MS261, another one. We just went through two of these saws, those two that I took on trade. You probably remember those two videos. So this is a 261 Mtronic. Both of those were non-Mtronic. So a customer dropped this saw off, and he said, the saw does not like to stay running, and that when it does run, it gets hot. So come along with me and let's find out what this saw's problem is. Well, here we are with another Stihl MS261 Mtronic version. This saw is a 2018 model. So we'll take a quick walk around this thing. Just look for anything visible, broken, missing. It's dirty and it looks to be well used. I did not sell this saw new, and I have never seen this saw before, so I have no history on it. I see green paint kind of everywhere, on the handle, on the clutch cover. Bottom of the tank is all green. Chain catcher is almost broke off. That thing's probably been hit 500 times. The spike is loose. The chain looks newer, but I think the bar groove is completely worn out. You see the sideways movement in that chain. The chain shouldn't be able to move back and forth that much. That is an Oregon branded chain. A lot of burring on that bar. But we'll examine that bar closer once we have it off. So looking at the handles, plastics, nothing looks broken. Chain brake works. The muffler is just missing one of its little caps. Those are just to keep dirt out. It's not imperative to have them in there, but just note that one's missing. Okay, well, he says this thing runs, but does not run well. So let's pull the bar and chain off of it before we do anything else. When I'm diagnosing a saw or going to test a saw that's here for running conditions, I always like to pull the bar and chain off before I do any work or any testing. If you've been watching my last few videos, then you've seen me pull a bar and chain off of a 261 that I took on trade. And once I pulled that bar and chain off, it was very evident that the saw had a bad crank bearing. The crankshaft had a whole bunch of movement to it. If I hadn't pulled the bar and chain off of that saw, I could have dove into the fuel system, pressure vac testing, and the whole thing would have been an absolute waste of time. And there is what's left of our crank bearing. I've made the mistake so many times. Before I do anything, the bar and chain comes off. Someone had this thing painted green and like green paint flaked off. I'm not really sure. You guys familiar with what's going on here? So everything here looks normal. The clutch drum, there's not a lot of play in it. Sometimes you touch these and they rock back and forth. Other than being dirty, I don't see much wrong here. Needs a chain catcher, needs the hardware all checked, and this should be all taken apart, cleaned, greased. But I like inspecting this area before I continue on. Okay, so does this thing run? And how does it run? Well, let's check his fuel out, see if there's fuel in it and what it looks like. There is fuel in there. Let's dump it out. We'll dump it into a clean pickle jar and take a look at it. I can see the fuel line and the fuel filter. That's a Stihl fuel filter in there. His fuel doesn't look to have any water in it. Looks like Stihl oil. So I'm going to put his fuel back in it. I'll leave a little bit at the bottom out because that's where a lot of the dirt in his fuel gets trapped. You're probably wondering, why is she putting that dirty fuel back in there? So before I change anything, I want to try to replicate his issue. And he was having an issue running it on his fuel. So we're going to start there and just go one thing at a time. Hopefully that's enough fuel to run it on. It should be. We'll just check and see if he uses bar oil. He does, and there's lots of bar oil in there. Okay, so he's got bar oil in there, and we've got his fuel in there with a bunch of his dirt captured in the cup. Let's step outside with it and see what he's talking about. I'll meet you out there. Well, we just heard this thing running, and it ran pretty decent. I gave the customer a call just to get some more specifics, and he said the saw runs pretty good for 15 to 20 minutes, and then it gets hot, and that when you shut it off, it doesn't like to restart, and if it does restart, it runs very hot, low power, and boggy. So, what should we do here? And it's oiling. So what I would do if I wasn't making a video about this is plug this thing into the computer, because I'm pretty sure I know what's wrong with it, and I would just fix it. But since we're making a video about this, it wouldn't be any fun for me just to go and fix it, because we all want to see the problem. Let's throw a bar and chain on this, go to the wood pile, get this thing warmed up, and see how it acts. Okay, so let's throw his bar and chain on this. I've got his bar and chain back on. I don't like his bar. His bar rails are worn out, but I don't want to change anything just yet. His bar and chain, his sharpening, his fuel, but I am going to add some more fuel because there's not enough in there, and we're going to go cut with this thing. It should heat up fast. It's 95 out, feels like 200. Shouldn't be an issue. Meet me out there. Oh, let's put some fuel in it first. So busy talking, I almost forgot. I think we're set. Meet you outside.
So right off the start, can't even test that saw, it's so dull. It will not pull itself through the wood. So right away, he could be overheating this saw, just using it like that. Show you one more time, I'll start it. I'll go throw one of my bars and chains on this saw and I'll come right back. Tony, you gonna learn how to split firewood or what? You're not catching any mice. Maybe you could do some splitting? Most people watching know what a sharp chain is, but when you sell new saws to people that have never run a saw before, sometimes they don't know the difference, or it slowly gets dull over time and they think that chain should last a long time, and they'll sit there cutting like this not knowing what a sharp chain is. Well, enough words, let's cut. So, I'm going to shut it off. I'm going to let it sit. I didn't have any problems with it. I'm going to give it a few minutes here and start it up again and see if I can replicate his problem. If I hadn't have swapped out bar and chain, I'd still be on that first cut. The saw would be working 10 times as hard for 10 times as long.
Tyler, would that be like trying to cut a tough steak with a butter knife when you could use a steak knife?
Yeah, exactly. You definitely want to use the steak knife.
If you use the butter knife, you'd be working really hard.
Looking at that steak, just wanting to get it in your mouth.
Do you want steak for dinner?
That sounds like a great idea.
Do you want a steak knife or a butter knife?
We will use the steak knives. So it's been about 4 or 5 minutes. The saw would be heat soaking. All the heat from the engine would be working its way to all the other parts. Like if you had a dull chain on it almost, and you had poor quality fuel, you could be vapor locking it right now. But let's give it a try. And it won't start. I'm gonna go back to the start setting. No start. All right, this is good. This is great. I didn't expect it to act up. This is an Mtronic. It doesn't have a hot start position, so I have to hold the throttle open to get this started, hopefully. So there it goes. Oh. I think it's starving for fuel. That's full choke. Start position. Will not start. Okay, back to the shop.
So this thing has a running issue. The second we stepped back in, we hooked up the spark tester to it just to verify it had spark, and it had lots of spark. So that is not the issue. Peeled the barn chain off at the same time. So I think that we have a fuel starvation issue here. Being this saw is Mtronic, it does have a fuel solenoid on the carburetor, and it looks to be probably the original one. So we should change that. But I think we have, I don't think that's our problem. I think we have another issue here in the fuel system. So we're going to start with the basics and just go through this and try to locate the issue. Let's dump that fuel out. While I was spark testing it, I also plugged this saw into the computer, and it told me this saw has 159 hours of use on it, and it has successfully started 3,118 times. Okay, we'll pull that fuel filter up out of the tank. So that's an orange filter from Stihl. (10 psi), and that holds no problem. That tells me the fuel line is not leaking and the carb doesn't have any internal leaks. Okay, well, let's take this apart a little bit. Black air filters. These are white now, so see, it's hard to tell when these are dirty. That one is fairly dirty. It's packed in there pretty good. So before I pull that carb off, I'm just going to go blow some compressed air and just get some of that crap out of there. I'll be right back. Okay, we've got a couple 8mm nuts to take off. Then this black air filter holder thing will come off. Okay, let's pry those things out of those things. Okay, so we'll just pull that off the threads and just move it off to the side, out of the way. That's a pretty good indication there that he runs this thing with a dull chain. It's that fine dust just stuck to everything. Oh, the puppy's getting hungry. I'll go blow this thing off. So right now, let's hook up to our fuel line and we'll test and make sure that the tank vent is working. So cap is on tight. I'm hooked up to the top of my fuel line and we're going to pull vacuum, and we shouldn't be able to build vacuum. I can hear it working. There, so the tank vent is working just fine. So the tank vent on this saw is down in there, hidden. So if it wasn't working and we had to replace it, we would have to drop the tank. Here's the tank off of one of my 261 Nightmare trade-ins. And there's the tank vent right there. So you can see why we can't see it when it's on the saw. Well, if nothing else, these saws will be useful as training aids. And speaking of those two trade-in saws, right at this moment, you guys are watching me take apart the second saw. I've been reading through the comments, and a lot of you have said throw them in boxes, send them out back. A few of you said pick them outside and run them over with something. And a lot of you said try to make one saw out of the two. I am contemplating trying to make one running saw out of the two, not to sell it, but more for entertainment and fun. Just kind of playing around and entertaining you guys. Let's pull a plug out of this. Okay, so there's an NGK plug. I watched something recently about spark plugs, and it was talking about like this here and the coloring of this. That looks to me like maybe this saw has been hot. What do you guys think? Well, let's get the camera and take a peek down the hole. Carbon buildup on top of the piston, but the cylinder looks fine. I don't see any scoring. There's nothing in here that would make that saw act that way. You can see the carbon flaking off the top of the piston. All right, pull it out. Let's do a compression test. Echo compression tester. And we have 170 pounds of compression. Nothing wrong with that. So compression is not the issue here. I'm going to go ahead and put his spark plug back in. We may end up replacing this, but I don't want to rule anything out just yet. Just going to check the gap. And it's gapped fine. So let's put it back where it was. With a little bit of time and a few simple tests, we have ruled out the fuel line as the issue. We have ruled out the fuel pump side of the carburetor. We have ruled out the tank vent. We have lots of compression. We have lots of spark. And the piston and cylinder look excellent. So I don't think this saw has an air leak, but I have the carb off already. Let's pull the muffler off and do a quick pressure vac test. We'll verify this thing is leak-free. I believe that our problem is in that carburetor, but we'll go there once we verify this thing is tight. Okay, one cap's already missing, so we'll just pry that other one out. Couple T27s in the bottom corners. Now this muffler has a spark arrestor right there. Let's just take it out and take a peek. Spark arrestor is perfectly clean. In general, I don't see very many clogged up spark arresters on strato saws. Very common to see on MS170s, MS180s, MS250s, and bigger saws with overfueling problems. I one time had a 461 come in not running right, and its problem was the spark arrestor was totally plugged up. So the piston looks excellent. I can see the factory machining marks on it. This saw is filthy. So when I have this thing sealed up for a pressure vac test, that'll be a good time to take this thing out and just give it a bit of a cleaning. It's probably never had a cleaning before. This thing cuts with a dull chain. There's fine dust everywhere. Stuck to everything. Do you want to have a look at the piston for the exhaust port? No? Oh, you probably do. Let me show you. I'll plug that exhaust port up. All sealed up. I know you've watched me do this 100 times, so I'll go through this pretty quickly. Okay, that's all sealed up. Spark plug's back in. Let's pull that decompression valve out and we'll throw a plug in there, and then we'll get this test done. Decompression valve out, and we'll shove this plug in. Just like that, easy peasy. Only took a couple minutes. Let's hook it up. Okay, we'll hook up to the port, and we are going to pull vacuum first. We're looking for half a bar. Okay, so we do not have a vacuum leak. Let's go over to pressure. As I suspected, the saw doesn't have any air leaks, but it only took me a few minutes to find out. I can rule all of that out and we can carry on without guessing. So an Mtronic chainsaw can compensate for a small air leak or hide it, disguise it. It wouldn't be able to if you had a large air leak, if there was a big gap, but a small air leak, the saw will run around it. So by doing this, I'm able to rule that out. I need your help over here. Oh, I'm glad you're here. I needed your help. I was looking for an assistant. Here, can you please hold my tools? Or does Lily want to be my assistant? Lily, you want to help? Lily? You look unimpressed. I'll find a job for you too. Okay, well, we got this thing all sealed up tight. We'll give this thing a cleaning. Should take this apart. I should pull that recoil off, and then we can give it a bit of a better cleaning. It should have a new rim sprocket. That's pretty worn. Like, this saw isn't here for cleaning, but No one obviously takes this thing apart for cleaning. Out it goes. This is what destroys chainsaws. Not taking care of them and not cleaning them. Well, this thing is back from its little mini spa treatment. Not a full day at the spa, just 10 minutes. So while I was out there, I noticed something missing. And I bet some of you noticed this already, and you're probably screaming at me through the TV. The summer-winter shutter is missing. It's just gone. Maybe he didn't know what it was and just flicked it in the garbage. So this summer-winter shutter is meant to be open, the engine heat get to the carburetor in the winter, and shut in the summer. So because he was running this with the shutter completely missing, the engine heat was all getting back to the carb. So I can see three things going against him right now. It is brutally hot here. He runs a dull chain, and he's running without his shutter in place. Would this heat possibly be causing the fuel to boil, vapor lock? Could this cause that running issue that we've seen? So I could just go ahead, throw this shutter back in, rebuild that carb, take this thing back outside, and it'll probably run perfect. But then I won't be able to say exactly what was causing his problem. So I think what I'm going to do is get all my tools off this thing, put this saw back together with this installed correctly, take this thing outside and cut with it again. And if it still acts up, we'll know this wasn't the problem, and then we'll jump into that carburetor. What do you think? I know I'm taking the long way around in this repair, but I'm making a video about it, and I'm curious. Let's do it. So we are going to install this. So you see that gap right there at my finger? We are going to close that gap off. So I'm going to pull my tools off this, put this thing back together, put a bar and chain on it, and this video is getting long enough, so we will meet you out at the wood pile first thing tomorrow morning.